Now we are moving for the fourth session of today's India Space Congress Day 2 on international market entry and cross-border supply chain. As India's space sector matures, the next frontier is global expansion. This session explores how Indian space companies and startups can enter international markets through strategic partnerships. Partnerships, export readiness, regulatory navigation, localization strategies, and cross-border supply chain integration. It will also examine pathways for co-development and sustainable participation in international space value chains. To chair this important discussion, please welcome on stage former Ambassador Sushil K. Singhal, whose distinguished diplomatic career and deep understanding of international trade and bilateral relations make him uniquely placed to lead this conversation. We also welcome our distinguished speakers and panelists on the stage, Mr. Nathan Davis, Trade Commissioner, Australian High Commission, Mr. Antonio Starr, Global Space Strategy Expert, and Mr. George Weinmann, Director, AstroWorks Ventures. I kindly request the chair and the esteemed panelists to come on stage as the session is about to get started. We all welcome you in this session and we are very honored to have you here with us today. I now kindly hand over the session to the esteemed chair and all the panelists. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry that we are starting slightly late, and this is when there is intense discussion is going on. This is what happens that we overshoot. So bear with us. And today's session has been, like it has been introduced. It's a very interesting session in my view, because when we're talking of the international market entry and cross-border supply chain integration, we all know what is happening in the supply chain, how we are so concerned, what we were doing about 10, 15 years back, and now what we are doing is totally different. So, and especially in the cutting edge area like space, so it becomes even more important. So, it's a very practical subject, because this is a market, it's an international market, and it's not merely just to sell a product in the market. It's about how you understand the market and build the right local partnerships, meeting the regulatory requirements, arrange finance, and creating trust with partners. I think that's a very important point in my view. And it's not only, the other side is also changing. The supply chain, they are also changing. Earlier the focus was, everybody was looking at the cost cuttings. But today, I think companies as well as the government, they look at reliability and long-term strategic comfort, which is important, as I said, in the sectors of today's discussion, be space, be it advanced technologies. And for India, when I come to India, it's a major opportunity. We have talent, we have technological capabilities, and a growing global presence. But international expansion has to be done carefully, as we will see during the discussion. What are the pitfalls in this area? And I'm very fortunate that we have a very distinguished panel with us. They will bring the perspective for the emerging markets, because I have the practitioners and the government side, how the missions are helping. So, this will be, I think, very good practical experience to all of us. And, but, we have only 45 minutes allotted, unfortunately. So we will try to keep the discussion focused and practical. And we will try to look at what companies should do before entering a new market, how the cross-border partnership can be built, what makes a supply chain trusted, and how emerging economies can become active participants in global change. I will just try to tell what we're planning to do. I think I'll request each of my panelists to speak for about 2 minutes, and then I'll have one or two questions, and then we'll see how this flows, and then of course we'll keep the floor open for the questions from the audience. So I'd like to invite Mr. Nathan Davis, Australian Trade Commissioner, to speak about his impressions in this field, and that we can carry forward.
Thank you, Ambassador. So, brief background. So I'm Nathan Davis. I'm the Trade and Investment Commissioner for Defence, Advanced Manufacturing and Space for the Australian High Commission here in New Delhi. My work involves primarily around supporting Australian companies to work within the Indian ecosystem, develop partnerships, develop supply chain opportunities, and also encourage and attract Indian companies that are looking to work within the Australian system. So a lot of my work revolves around the thematic of the discussion today. Australia has a storied backdrop in the space ecosystem, so we've been active in the space for about 80 years now. For those familiar, we've had quite an intertwining with human space milestones, such as we supported the original moon landing through the Parkes satellite facility down in ACT there. We've been looking to support now the Gaganyaan mission within India, and we have a long way to go in terms of where our own space capability and ecosystem sits. So I might stop there, but looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Trade Commissioner. You are very helpful. My question to you is there are going to be two actually questions. First would be that from a trade and investment perspective, what are the first thing a company should do before entering a new international market? And with a follow-up, that a trade office like yours, how you can help the companies in reducing their marketing entry risks? Market entry risks.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of the suggestions that we usually provide to certainly the Australian ecosystem when looking to enter into India or in effect all markets, and this isn't just necessarily localised to space, but what I recommend for all Australian companies is, of course, do the horizontal scan, sure. Recognise where you do have the intersect of value add for your product. So something I frequently like to supply for the space ecosystem specifically is don't just necessarily look at, say, government space supply chains. Consider where your solution supports a broader ecosystem in the commercial sector as well, because then that opens up the level of opportunity, and certainly developing your market awareness around that is really important. We support a number of companies when it comes to operations on the ground and how they should think about the regulatory environment, helping them navigate the free trade agreement that Australia and India have, for example, looking to incorporate and what that entails, the right model and method, whether or not it's sort of a greenfield sort of setup or whether or not a partnership work, and then certainly look to connect them with those types of partners and those in the ecosystem that we work with. For Indian companies looking to the Australian ecosystem, and certainly from a market entry perspective, there's a number of things that we like to sort of work through, and the same advice that I extend to Australian companies operating in India, of course, extends into Australia itself for Indian companies. But a couple of the things particularly to note is more the stringent regulatory environment that we have with respect to the governance structures. Australia has a very good stable governance environment, particularly when it comes to space, IP, and also export control, when particularly we see a number of organisations that are looking to enter the Australian market, which will then develop export supply chains for accessing the rest of the Pacific. So certainly looking through some of the requirements around that when, dual use capability and export control, these sorts of things are very important. But the overarching thing that I wish to impress upon Indian companies entering the Australian ecosystem is the sense that Australia is a capability market rather than a scale market. It is, the level of maturity is in each of our space ecosystems is, frankly, vastly more mature in Australia and much more niche in Australia. And so how that could look to develop is that we have the niche technologies and the world-class education is an innovation ecosystem that helps new technologies thrive. But if you're looking at the sort of scale-up that could occur in Australia, the model will look slightly different. It will look more about local partnerships for a very niche subset and really owning that lane.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davis. I think you have given very comprehensive response. And I'm sure the companies who are listening, they will take full advantage of what you have told them. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce my second panelist, Mr. Antonio Stark. He's a very well-known name, I think, in the area. I think I don't have to say much about him. He has worked with very many organizations, and his focus is on international space partnership, if I'm not mistaken, space policy and regulations, lunar economy. I think this is a very interesting area. So I will request you now to speak for 2 minutes, 3 minutes about the subject which we are in right now.
Yes, thank you so much. I've been really fortunate to have been working with a variety of companies and a variety of organizations across many countries, including Australia. So I've known Australia quite well when I was working for an Australian space company based out of Sydney, and Australia has been a tremendous help in actually supporting our sales and business development and partnerships around the world. And that is, I think, honestly, a model way of supporting domestic industry, build partnerships overseas, and that is also an approach that we're seeing with many other countries. Japan has JETRO, Korea has a similar KOICA, similar organizations to export and understand that domestic capabilities can then be exported and build partnerships overseas. At the same time, that is not always the case for many countries. Again, government-led contribution and government-led partnerships usually rely on bilateral partnerships, and sometimes when space companies, especially when they're trying to build a whole ecosystem or infrastructure, they cannot rely on bilateral partnerships alone. For this, they actually need a company-led or institutional-led approach to partnerships, and that is also where I've also seen a lot of growth in the sector. India within space has been trying to build a lot of those partnerships. Standardization and testing has been another key factor that I've seen India try to take leadership on. Just even last month, we had the ISO meeting for space standards here in New Delhi as well, and that is where we actually see that India is not just trying to be a manufacturing hub. It is already a manufacturing hub, but with the ISO standardization taking leadership in the global stage, it allows India to be a core factor in the global supply chain because it is then accredited by standards India is then leading the standards that will enable these companies to then be able to export its components to the supply chain without having to rely so much on governments having to make all the introductions or having to make events, etc. So I've worked and lived in a variety of countries in almost all the continents, in Latin America, various places in Singapore, Malaysia, Korea, Japan, and as well as India. And I'm really happy to see that a lot of countries are taking both a commercial-led approach as well as a government-led approach to ensuring that capabilities can mix and markets can really expand. And even during geopolitical storms like now, where we're taking double and triple looks into where are the faults and where are the potentials in our global supply chains. Like, is a bottleneck a risk, or is it an opportunity for you to diversify? So that's what I've been seeing so far in the last few years.
Mr. Stark, I have a question for you. How can startup navigate export controls and technology transfer restrictions while they are trying to scale globally? This is your field, very much related to your field.
Yes, so regulatory approval and export control is, I think anyone who has tried to do a space startup, trying to find I already known whenever I've seen a founder, they never think about the legal costs associated. They never think about having to hire a lawyer, and then later on they decide they should have done this a long time ago, or like they should have started looking into the cost of this a long time ago as well. Like when India is really good at making things low cost, but one thing that they don't quite realize is that those low-cost manufacturing doesn't actually come alongside with the necessary regulatory approvals or the testing adherences, etc. That's again why I think that the ISO standards meeting that happened last month in Delhi is so significant, because then you're really downloading the costs for the future. But again, regulatory approvals, that costs a lot. If you're trying to sell something, then you need to declare it to your local government. You need to tell to the incoming government. And for any space missions that is international, then you need multiple levels of governmental approvals, and a lot of times multiple ministries need to also provide those approvals as well. And for many times, no one really knows what they need to do. Like even if you hire lawyers, even they themselves don't really know what to do. So you see a lot of the consulting firms or associations like SIA-INDIA or India Space Association that is trying to be there to streamline those processes, or consulting firms like Tata or Nova Space that has already had expertise in these kind of market entry and market validation with the necessary regulatory approvals, giving you cost estimates. So like, hey, your base cost is this, but if you want to sell this at certain markets, at certain quantities, these are the hurdles that you need to get through, the approvals you need to get through, and then your end cost will be this, and then will you be, be cost competitive with other competitors in the market or not? So that's something that a lot of the founders usually overlook, and I think that's where associations like SIA-INDIA or similar really come with a lot of inherent expertise to support the startups. And InSpace and SIL is also gearing up to support startups these days as well.
Thank you very much for your insight, and I think everybody will benefit from what you have told them. Now I have my privilege to invite my co-panelist, Mr. George Weinmann, a director of AstroWorks, which is it's a very interesting, it's a very new venture. I was very interesting to read that you started in 2025, but he provides the muscle, real muscle, which is required, which is the money. So, so it will be very interesting to hear how you came into this area and how Indian companies can benefit.
So, Ambassador, thank you for having this panel and hosting us today. It's exciting again to be here at the Indian Space Congress. I think I realized the other day that I think I've been a speaker at every single Indian Space Congress since the first one, so that's kind of fun. In terms of my background, my first job was working for Boeing on the Sea Launch program, which was in 1997, and it was a joint venture between Boeing, Kavarner of Norway to build an ocean-going platform, Yuzhnoye and Yuzhmash of Ukraine, and Energia of Russia. This was just after the Cold War ended, and part of my job was to handle the loads and dynamics data of the rocket. We couldn't tell our colleagues in Russia and Ukraine why things were a certain way. We just had to tell them the specifications that they had to meet, and then not why. And so very familiar with export controls. We had a military officer sitting in the building with us that had to review every single thing that went between the companies. But the good news is that export controls have really improved a lot since then. Very quickly, AstroWorks Ventures is a venture studio, so we're actually not a venture capital firm, but we're even better because we invest in ideas and develop those ideas into compelling business plans that then the funding community can support. And so I would just say that when it comes to cross-border trade or large international opportunities, the power of an idea is very powerful. You have to have something that triggers motivation from both sides or multiple parties to engage. And so that's what AstroWorks Ventures is focused on. And in particular, we have a project that maybe some of you are aware of. We announced last year called HabSpace, or Space Habitat Company, to develop an international module to attach to a post-ISS space station. And the idea behind it is that Right now, after the ISS retires, the United States has a plan to develop a commercial LEO destination. And China is doing their own space station. Russia wants to do their own space station. India has an idea about developing its own space station. But the problem with that is you can't trade amongst space stations. And it's very difficult for industries to collaborate, and they're there to support each other. So we realized there was a need in the market to develop something that would allow multiple countries to collaborate in one location in low Earth orbit, and that would have economies of scale. One of the things I'd like to point out is that the International Space Station has 8 docking ports, and most of the replacement ideas for ISS are limited to about 3. And so there's a need to develop infrastructure that will allow more trade in space. So that's where I'm coming from at the moment. But to talk a little bit about kind of this panel, I think that international trade it's relatively easy if you've just got a widget and somebody else in another country wants to buy the widget. And while there might be some rigmarole to go through to get export clearances or whatnot, it's a pretty simple problem. But those kinds of things don't necessarily grow markets. And in India today, with all of the scientific and industrial capacity that it has, the real opportunity is to get people excited about growing markets together. And to do that, you need to bring new ideas to the table that show how both parties or multiple parties involved will grow their industry. And so let me give sort of a point in case. If you say, I just want to sell to you, then the other side is going to look at you and say, well, can I get competition and try and drive down your price? But if you say, can we do something together that both of us grow our markets, then both sides are very motivated to jump over the multiple hurdles of making that work. And so whether it's space-related or other industries, biopharma and other areas, there has to be a motivation to drive overcoming those hurdles. And then once there's that motivation, then the governments are willing to work together on standards, on various other ways of lowering barriers to making that trade happen. So I'd say the power of an idea is quite powerful, and governments will go out of their way when there's something compelling.
Thank you very much, for your insight. And I stand corrected. And in your, the statement, you also showed that you're not just joint venture capital; it's a studio. That's why you gave the very well-rounded answer to I think many of the issues which companies face. I just have one question for you, and it's related to the Indian. How can Indian space startups can position themselves to attract global venture capitals and strategic partners? What advice you will give them?
Great question. I think India is already starting to show up more on the market. I think that showing up at the conferences around the world is making a big difference. Over the last few years, I'm seeing much increased participation there. I would definitely encourage that. There was an announcement today that SIA-INDIA is going to take a delegation to Spacetide in Japan. I think that's fantastic. So as they say, the old adage is the first rule in life is you have to show up. So getting out to these conferences in these events is the first step. The second is to know your customer. If an American company wanted to come to India, all of you would say, well, first you have to understand India a little bit. You can't just show up and assume that people are going to buy you. And I think that would be true from any country. So if you want to sell into the United States, or you want to sell into Europe or into Southeast Asia, the first step is to understand where your customer is coming from and to understand what they're really looking for. Are they simply looking for a commodity lower price, or are they looking for something that gives them a strategic advantage? And if you can understand how your product creates a stronger advantage for your customer, then you can adjust your positioning on that front. I think there's a lot of interesting innovation capable in India, but sometimes the impression that one might get is, hey, tell me what you need, I can do anything. Whatever you want to make, I'll make it for you. And that's not a very compelling idea. If you can say, I understand that, you're in the business of mass manufacturing satellites, we are willing to spend the effort to master thermal control. And so we'd like to do a demo project for you, and then, start on something that gets their attention and shows that you are investing in intellectual property or capabilities that they need, that they are not interested in spending time and effort on. And so first is to understand your customer, understand how you create a strategic advantage for them, and then you'll find that will drive interest from the buyer side. And if you can show that you're driving interest from the buyer side, then venture capital is definitely interested in playing that angle. Commodity manufacturing, I'll call it being an also-ran of an idea that's, several people are already out there pitching. Those are not very compelling for the venture capital community. There are some people who invest in that, but it doesn't generate a lot of new IP, and it's not highly defensible. If you can show how your product is creating a strategic advantage for your customers, then there's definite interest from that. One other quick point, some American and European VCs look at India and say, oh, complex for us to invest there. We don't understand. Now, there are ways around that. One is to incorporate outside of India, but of course that's less attractive from an Indian point of view. The other is to look at how others have presented themselves as an attractive investment, to show that you have the administrative capacity to manage all of the things that they think are hard about India, real or not real. There's a lot of perception, but show to them that you don't just have a technologist, or you just have, or you've got a great manufacturing person, but show them that you have a great accountant. Show them that you've got a great lawyer. Show them that administratively you understand what's scary to them about investing in India. And if you show them that you've got that piece well under control, they may get over their perceived barriers of investing in you outside of their comfort zone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weinmann. I think what you have told is a very practical, guidance to all the startups in India who are looking for international market. I will take an advantage of being a moderator, and I will throw one or two questions to all of you, if you can answer that shortly. One is, what do you understand by the trusted supply chain in practical terms? Because, this is a term which I see that is being thrown around a lot. But what does really mean? And related to that would be, are the global supply chain, they are becoming more open or more fragmented because of the geopolitics? So these two related questions, and it's available. All of you can make a comment, short comment.
I have one simple word to the trusted supply chain: consistency. Whether I also involved in some air cargo activities, and it's amazing that people think that certain things that are commodities, it's always just the cheapest price. It's actually consistency of delivery is probably the most important factor, even for things that are otherwise considered as commodities.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think just to expand slightly, where I see visibility, where I see predictability, consistency, and also repetition is certainly, I think, what most companies would look to understand about entering into the global supply chains. You noted that it was, quite fragmented and difficult at the moment. I don't know if it's necessarily a sense of more open or more closed off. I do think that the very fundamentals of global supply chains have shifted in a really meaningful way, and certainly changed how businesses operate, but also how nations operate. So certainly on a government-to-government level, what I'm observing more is a lot more, less to do with the multilateral world order, but more about plurality and ensuring that we have good bilateral structures and these sorts of things. So certainly from a perspective about how you sort of bake that into company to company and commercial outcomes, certainly the work that I look to do is in a very narrow corridor from an Australia-India perspective to take the example, but Australia and India have that free trade agreement AI-ECTA in place. What does that actually mean from a supply chain? Well, it introduces some of that visibility. You know what's going to go on in terms of moving goods between Australia and India. You know the tariff rate, you know the types of logistics supply chains now. There will be a degree of predictability with that, and then hopefully that sort of extends and exudes some confidence into the business community. But that will then trickle through into the business-to-business relationships and developing the visibility and predictability there. I think George made a really good point about, show them the transparency of your own company in terms of, who is your accountant and lawyer, great arguments. And I think that extending beyond that, who are your logistics partners, who are you using, how well do you know them, are you ensuring that you have that sort of insurance and infrastructure sitting around it that when things do go wrong, those relationships that you can call on actually matter, and you know that and trust the partners that you're working with.
And for the last one, so the space industry is neither becoming more open nor is it becoming more closed. It is simply becoming more regulated, and the actors that can survive that are actors who can navigate the regulations. And this is a fundamental shift of what space industry has become from previous years when it was government-led to today's commercial. Like before, space was a science and science, research, development. It was basically an experiment. You use taxpayer money and you try to do something that is good for the sovereign world, for your country. It was, if something goes right, then it goes right as long as no lives are lost, as long as there's no big explosion or a big kind of embarrassment of the government, it was okay. But that was when space was just research and development. Now it is becoming a commercial sector. When commercial sector means is that we have more accountability, we have more eyes looking into it. It's no longer so much taxpayer money, but it's actually shareholder money, and that means more eyes into it. That means people need to lower prices, that people need more accountability and consistency in the level of quality that things go in. It is no longer a single institution making everything from launcher to vehicle to payload under one roof, but actually like contractors and subcontractors, components and subcomponents, all coming together by different people, and then every step of the way you have more eyes. And whenever they have more eyes, then you have lawsuits, and when you have lawsuits, you have regulations either before or after the lawsuits happen. So right now, it's not open, it's not closed, it's simply becoming more actors coming into play and more government agencies or other associations or insurance companies trying to regulate that market and also trying to profit from it. So that's the fundamental shift of the space industry from the 20th century to the 21st century now.
Thank you.
I'm just going to add one last quick comment on the multipolar versus geopolitics thing. I would ignore all of that and just have confidence, because if India makes great products, if you as an entrepreneur or as an established business are doing amazing things, at some point the geopolitics is going to get out of the way, and you need to be ready and just be confident, because there is a lot of opportunity in the world, and the biggest thing that holds people back is this perception of, that's not the favorite thing, or that's not the right thing, or there's going to be, do they like us or not? Get over that and just be confident in yourself, and you present yourself with from a strong backbone and a strong idea of what your value is, and you will find that at some point the other side, even if there's some tension, the tension will eventually pass, and they'll be looking to do deals. And so just be ready and be confident, and everything's going to work out. Pretty confident about that.
I think very useful advice. Now I think we come to the most interesting part, that is the questions from the audience. Only request is please keep your questions brief so that we can take as many questions as the organizers allow us. But it all depends on you. And I would say refrain from comments. We can have in one-to-one comments, but if you have specific questions, please ask. And you can mention whom you are asking.
Good evening, panel. I'm Colonel Manik Anand. I was the former head of the Aerospace System Division in the Ministry of Defense. So my question is to Nathan Davis, the Trade Commissioner of the Australian High Commission. Since you represent and want to integrate the Australian companies, so what kind of technologies are the Australian companies industry looking into the aerospace industry as far as India is concerned? Like, what kind of collaboration you're looking at? You said that you have got state-of-the-art education system in Australia and you are very market mature and niche technologies. So when you look at India, what are kind of niche technologies you're looking at to collaborate with us? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. I guess there's no, there is a suite of technologies that I guess we're sort of looking at here, and that extends, as I mentioned at the top of the conversation, I look after defense advanced manufacturing in space. So my interests are sort of looking at a lot at that angle. But that said, I do also want to speak about some of the colleagues that I have in the broader agency, which will look at critical technologies across the AI spectrum, quantum, a lot in ag tech as a key facet of the bilateral relationship. In areas of defence, we've been looking at a number of sort of component and subcomponent type level, because Australia's defence industry is not necessarily the scale that, say, US or Europe or others would necessarily contend. So the actual level of technology will be quite specific. But what I did want to sort of submit is that the types of technology and the interest and partnerships and collaboration aspects that we're most interested in are areas of shared challenge between India and Australia. So by way of example, when I think about the space ecosystem, I'm thinking about space situational awareness, I'm thinking about Earth observation, particularly Earth observation for applications which we both have shared concerns, such as weather observation, such as areas of managing wildfire risk. Of course, in India, we're about to come into Delhi, the monsoon season. Australia has very bad flooding as well, so being able to use geospatial analytics and other things to predict weather patterns and observe when those challenges are going to come, those are the sort of types of technologies, collaborations, partnerships that we are looking for. So as I say, it's a bit of an array, but the central theme that we have across it is where does Australia and India most have an intersect that aligns to tackle joint priority.
I can quickly add on to it, given that I also worked in an Australian company. So Australia has a lot of technology vertical that is great, which is AI and computer science, but also especially machinery, robotics, mining, and biopharma. These are specific verticals that I've seen Australia really take a lot of interest in, and a lot of ways where they collaborate a lot. Especially also because you're in defense, Australia being part of Five Eyes, as well as multiple other consortiums, as well as participating in various Indo-PACOM exercises, is also a really key player for those things. Similarities for Australia and India in terms of trade perspective is that it is also very state-driven. So there are some countries where it is very federally driven, but India, each state has a very strong presence that has its own cohort of economic incentives. Australia, very similarly, is also driven very state-wise. The federal government in Australia does its own thing, but also, like, for example, New South Wales government has their own programs to incentivize companies and do bilateral agreements with other countries as well. So that's something that you would like to look at. And the last thing is universities. Australian universities are completely different to other universities. They're humongous. They are really, really big. Australian universities, giant institutions with huge budgets for research and development, and also like a lot of companies that spin out of those universities. That's another area you can also look into partnerships.
Yeah. We will take, I think, 2 more questions. One? Okay. You are the boss.
Thank you. It wouldn't be a question, to be honest. I mean, it would be rather a remark. First of all, amazing panel. Thank you for all the panelists who have presented their insights. And I would like to introduce myself. My name is Alina Joseph. I work as an innovation advisor for the Netherlands Innovation Network, hosted by the Embassy of the Netherlands as well as the consulate in Bangalore. So just wanted to resonate the insights given by the Australian Trade Commissioner as well. We also look into a lot of collaborations with India, mainly on the downstream side. So I'll make it very quick. If you are interested in collaborating with the Dutch space ecosystem, mostly on the downstream, using space-based applications for agriculture, water, climate, disaster management, anything, please do reach out to me. I will be here today. Unfortunately, not there tomorrow, so I'll be outside. All right, thank you. You have still one question. You can still ask.
We have to take at least one question.
Yeah. Somebody else? No? Nobody? Great. Oh, is that? Oh, sorry, I missed out.
One more brave soul.
Hi, I'm a lawyer. I'm with Trilegal. I'm just very inquisitive of the global marketplace regarding, how India can sort of enter that marketplace, and it's also getting super hyper competitive, and everyone has export controls in place and related challenges, various economies. So I was wondering, any thoughts on how Indian companies can better navigate those challenges and enter different markets?
I've got simple one because everyone always talks about export controls and how difficult they are. You should think of export controls like it's just another thing you have to do, like accounting. No one who's starting a company thinks, oh my gosh, I've got to go do accounting. Oh, this is going to be so hard. I can't start my business. Export controls are pretty rote. They're pretty defined. There are not that many people who've read all the regulations and know them as well as we have people who do accounting. But in India, you have a lot of accounting rules, and it's complex. But people knuckle down and they do it, and they hire somebody who just does that. And if you just read the rules and follow them, you will find that while yes, there are export controls, there are ready and willing licensing procedures for most 99% of what most of you would ever want to do, even for those of you who are edging into defense tech. There's only a very few things where it gets sticky and people see that as a very challenging aspect. And even for those areas where it's getting close to the boundary conditions of, well, you really need an ITAR license and we're only going to give that ITAR license to a very select few people, you can often find that you don't need an ITAR license for the entire system. You can find the niche piece that you do and show how that piece is not ITAR, it's only EAR in the case of the United States, Export Arms Control Regulation, or there may be similar ones in other countries. So don't look at the ITAR as a trade barrier. Think of it like accounting. It's just something you gotta do and budget accordingly for the right talent to do it and get on with it.
Yeah, I can quickly. One thing that I would like to say that regulatory approval and export control is different from accounting. So accounting, you do that after your business is done. For ITAR and regulatory approval, you need to do that kind of before you start making the sales. And at least when I was working with companies, they actually don't understand how much money or time this will take, especially if they're trying to diversify their supply chain, which is why a lot of companies, they really do stick with a lot of the suppliers that they're used to, because they know, even if it is more expensive, they know it's a known variable on how long it will take and how much money it will take. But if you're trying to identify new suppliers, new components, they need to do new testing, new certifications, and that is something that they really usually don't know. So companies, legal companies like Trilegal already has a really good background in legal support for many Indian startups. SIA-INDIA just also announced their e-catalog. So services or associations like this can at least make it slightly more transparent, slightly more expectable on how much money and how much time it's going to take, so that startups can actually go look out for suppliers that is cheapest and actually make usage out of them, rather than be surprised that, hey, the manufacturing takes this long time, but the certification of the component takes this much time, which we did not account for. Now we can't actually deliver our spacecraft on time. So that is where, again, companies like Trilegal can really support and help.
Thank you very much. I think now the takeaway for all of us from this discussion is that the international markets, they require preparations, patience, and reliable local partnership. And this sector, it offers major opportunities. But success will depend on regulations, standards, innovation, and long-term collaborations. At that note, I would like to thank all my distinguished panelists for their valuable insight. And I thank the organizers for keeping with us and bearing with us, and the audience for being part of this very important discussion. Thank you very much.
A very warm thank you to our distinguished chair and esteemed panelists for an insightful discussion on how India can deepen its participation in the global space value chain. I now request all the panelists and our esteemed chair to come forward for a group photograph. Please pay a huge round of applause to our panelists and our esteemed chair. We are really honored to have you with us today. Now we'll be taking a 10-minute tea break, and we require and request all the delegates to kindly be present here at 3:35 p.m. as the next session will start then. Thank you.